there we go.
Or I guess AJ's going to want to do his announcements.
No, he's got announcements.
Ooh.
It's the secretary.
This is
Finally getting AJ.
violent overthrow of the president.
No, you got
Corey, just have a coup.
Yeah.
Take over the presidency.
Yeah, have a coup. And then
All right, welcome to meeting 72. All 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All 10 of us. Woo! Midterms.
Double digits.
Double digits, baby. All right. Yeah. So we're going to be going over firewalls, IPTables. IPTables is a fancy word for
Firewall.
Linux firewall. Yeah. Yep. So if you're new, I don't think anyone here's new, right? No one's new. All right.
Sign in if you didn't already.
Yeah. No. Sign in. Sign in. I've signed in 8 times in the last year and a half. So don't be like me.
Don't be like AJ.
Don't be like me.
Yeah, so announcements. This is pretty exciting. Sadly, we only have 10 people to share it with. 11. 11. But we have at least what I think, is this a final or is this
I think
close to final? Logo, by the way, I'm talking about the logo.
I have to get like the high quality versions and stuff, and I think they're going to do a social media kit for us, but this is the design we're going with.
All right, so this is the design we're going with for the chapter logo. Took a long time to get there, but we're here.
Any thoughts?
Yeah. Any thoughts?
The B? That's a
That's a wasp chapter.
Is there no wasp chapter yet?
All right. So aside from the logo, the NSA internship application window is closing. Remember, there's actually a few. I think one's already passed. It was the October, or it's about to pass. It's October 15th. And then this other one is October 31st. And there's a bunch of opportunities. So capitalize.
Have any of you guys are you interested in the NSA? Have you applied?
Yeah, she's the person to talk to.
If you don't,
you're doing the online application now. All right. When you get that, get that done as soon as possible, because when you submit and tell Vicky, we have somebody at the NSA who's going to review it specifically for UC students. So
yeah, and get a hands-on look at your specific application before they actually vet it.
That's kind of like
it's a pretty cool privilege.
Fast track to the top of the stack.
So you submit your application. If they see something they don't like, normally they just throw it out. Instead, it comes back to you. They say, "Hey, we want to hear more about this," or "We don't really value this."
You get a second chance, basically. So it's cool.
So Vicky pestered me today about this.
Yeah. So if you haven't already gone to the information for this, it's if you go to last week's slides on the website, which is meeting 71. So you go to meetings, and you go to 71. In the slides is information about every single internship and links and everything. So just go to last week's slides.
Just do it. Follow your dream.
And then also, this past Sunday, we came upon a date for a hackathon that Cyber UC is going to host. We were going to go with Saturday, October 20th, and this is going to be focused on more NSA news, focused on the NSA Codebreaker Challenge. We're going to host it, answer questions, see how far we can get. So
this isn't
mark
like a
that on
normal
your calendar.
hackathon where you submit a project. We're all just working on the code breaker.
How many of you guys would be interested in participating in just getting together and solving the code breaker challenge?
No. Does everyone know what the code breaker challenge is?
Should we do an overview of that?
Yeah. Do you want to pull up the site?
Yeah, sure.
It's codebreaker.ltsnet.net.
Yeah, so it's essentially, how many of you guys are familiar
If you
with
start typing
Capture the
codebreaker,
Flag?
it'll probably come up in my suggestions.
Capture the flag. It's like it's the NSA's
There it is.
Capture the Flag, and it incorporates stuff like
Is it
Wireshark
visit
packet
the challenge
inspection,
page?
like I think we did last week. And it incorporates some reverse engineering.
You want to make it bigger?
Incorporates
Plus a couple
blockchain.
times.
So it gets pretty tough.
Oh, that works.
But I think it'd be a really fun time if we got a bunch of people together in a room and just
So this is just
got
text.
together
This is
and
it.
try to learn something and knock it out.
If you are looking to apply to the NSA at all, any progress made on this is good progress. So even if you just complete, level 1, that still looks better for you than having not done it at all.
But yeah, never even hearing of it. So we're going to be doing that on the 20th, so mark your calendars.
Is that
then,
on the calendar, by the way?
Not on the calendar yet.
Not on the calendar yet. Yeah. And then I was not a part of this, but yesterday, people, part of Cyber at UC, went to Lakota East. Anyone here that went to that?
Yeah. So
How did that go?
three of us, Hayden, Ryan, and I went to Lakota East, and we did the first of 3 outreaches that we're planning to do with them this semester. This one was an initial prep for a capture the flag that we're actually going to host for them on the 3rd meeting. We're going to go back again in 2 weeks, do a little bit of a refresh, and then we're going to cover a few more topics for them. And then we're going to host the CTF on the 3rd time we're there. If you guys are interested in helping out with that at all, we could definitely use a little bit of help. Even if you can't make it to the actual outreach events, we definitely do need help putting the material together too. So we went this past Monday. We're going 2 weeks from then, so the 22nd, and another 2 weeks after that. It's like November 5th, I think. So.
And if you need volunteer hours, it counts.
Yep.
And so, I guess moving on, we've beated this like to death, but we're inching closer and closer. Remember, November 3rd, Chipotle fundraiser. Stop by at 4 o'clock. And I guess more important news, more pertinent news, since it might actually be happening sooner. Election nominations. This is a conversation we had this Sunday. I don't know if you saw the email, but I kind of explained it a little bit. Basically, we're going to be going by a nomination process where anybody can nominate anybody. You can even nominate yourself for any of the committee head positions, including president as well as vice president and secretary, and all the leadership positions that are a part of Cyber at UC. An important part of any chapter or anything in an organization is making sure every position moves on and there's kind of like an overturn for the future. So
you can nominate yourself, you can nominate somebody else, but over the next like 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks, we're going to be doing nominations.
Nominations are next week, right?
Well, you could basically nominate any time. It's just,
Okay, so
we're looking into nominations over the next like week or two, and depending on how we set up our elections, we'll be moving.
So we're gonna like kick you out from being president.
Well, so in the organization, once you serve in a role and you move past that role and you're no longer serving in it, you take a mentorship position. Same with all the content like chairs, all the committee chairs, I should say, and all of our officers. So when you serve, you become a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
I become a mentor.
or you graduate.
You graduate. Yeah.
Don't worry. I don't like kicking you out of this.
Well, it's fine. Someone should kick me out, actually. I need it.
You won't be here in a year.
I need it.
All right. So, with that, let's move on to weekly content.
Okay, first story of the week. Google Plus, that thing none of you are happy that you have a profile account for, is shutting down for mainly 2 reasons. Yeah. One, Google's finally admitting that Google Plus never really caught on. So, they are, partly because of that, they've decided to shut it down for consumers. It'll still be offered as an enterprise service, sort of like Facebook for Business or whatever they call it, where companies just have a local network that has Facebook on it.
Yeah.
They're going to offer something like that. But the other reason it's getting shut down is because they just found out about a really big data leak that they had. Over 500,000.
Vulnerability. There's no evidence that there was a breach or leak.
A data vulnerability, sure. I've always heard it's still classified as a leak, even if they don't prove someone used it. But no, there is no proof that this vulnerability was exploited to steal the data. But over 400 third-party developers did have access to user account information, including emails, physical addresses, jobs, date of birth, photos, stuff like that. And it was for over 500,000 users, which is a lot. I think that's like basically everyone on Google+. So this vulnerability was introduced back in 2015, and they fixed it back in March, but Google actually chose not to disclose it. That's I suppose, the benefit of finding your own vulnerabilities before someone else does. Because Facebook was going through that whole Cambridge Analytica thing, and the last thing they wanted to do was pull the fire off of Facebook and onto themselves. So they have decided not to release the technical details of this vulnerability, but from the sounds of it, it's very similar to the Facebook API flaw that Hayden was covering like 2 weeks ago, or maybe last week. So they've decided they're going to start shutting it down. By August 2019, it should no longer be available for normal consumers. But in good news, that's come out of this at least, they've decided to add additional privacy protections and permissions so now when an application or whatever is asking for permissions, instead of just saying, yeah, I accept, instead it's going to go through each individual permission one at a time, and you'll have to accept each one that way, so someone can't be like, yeah, I want access to your photos and your, I don't know, your Google Drive, and then like way down at the end of a list of like 10 things, like, oh, and I also want like system root access, you know. Nothing major, just a few things. So, this one, I don't know if any of you know, but Silk Road was really, really big for drug trafficking. It was kind of like one of the first really big dark web crime stores, basically. The administrator for it, or the guy who basically founded it, was arrested back in 2013 when they did a raid on Silk Road servers, and Silk Road got shut down, and they actually confiscated all of their bitcoins on those servers, and as of the writing of this article, which is like a few days ago, that was worth like 33.6 million, so whoever decided to auction that when they did is probably regretting that a lot right now.
It's the feds, man, they don't give a shit.
Yeah. Yes?
Wait, like, what did he do that warranted life in prison? Like, normally life in prison is synonymous with, like, murdering someone. Like, was it that bad? I understand that
He just ran the largest online marketplace for the exchange.
There was a lot more than drugs being sold. Like, there was, like, hitman services and stuff like that, like stolen credit card information, stolen identities, child pornography.
They wanted to make an example out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, so this guy got in a lot of trouble. And then there was like, I watched like a documentary on it like a year ago, and he had like a lot of other stuff going on that was a lot worse. But feel free to look into that if you want to know more. But this guy, he was just an administrator. He wasn't like a super high up guy. He doesn't seem like he was like super smart either. He was basically just the customer service guy for the site. Basically, if sellers or customers were having trouble, they just contacted him, and he'd bring it to someone like who was maintaining the site or bug fixing the site, and they'd fix the problem or whatever. But he just pled guilty to drug trafficking because that was just one of the big things on the site, and so he could get up to 20 years in prison. And lastly, we've got these MikroTik routers, an extension of a previously existing vulnerability that has been patched. It was patched like within a day. Has been found. The reason why this is still a problem is because people basically never update their routers. So this vulnerability is still on, what does it say, 70% or over 70% of all MikroTik routers are still on vulnerable versions. So that's part of why this is so bad. This is probably going to get used to make a botnet sometime in the next couple of weeks, because what this is yeah, if it hadn't already been done. Initially, this was just simple directory traversal. So I come in at this folder and suddenly I can move somewhere else. It wasn't that big a deal. Like it's terrible, but not world-ending. Now it's been reclassified as critical because turns out that you can use directory traversal to get into like, I guess it's like a folder or something where they just store the administrator credentials and just use that to open up a root shell, which will just give you remote code execution powers. So, which basically means that those routers on vulnerable versions are essentially useless for actually firewalling you or protecting you at all. On top of the fact that they could get used for something like a botnet or whatever. So.
Oh joy.
Yeah, just 2 recommended readings this week. This one, the growing popularity of supply chain attacks. I know AJ's a big fan of that.
Yeah.
And
Supply chain.
this top one, not really what it sounds like. This is from Krebs on Security, and a really big point that I thought was most interesting in this article was he talks about how basically from all his time working in the InfoSec industry, no one is immune. Everyone leaks data at some point. If data is on the internet, it is going to get leaked at some point by somebody.
Hey, did we cover last week at all the Chinese chip?
No, I wanted to do an in-depth on that, but I didn't get a chance to put enough information together to do it justice.
You mentioned supply chain attacks, and that's just what popped in my mind.
Yeah. So we'll be talking more about that next week.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give that one a nice big in-depth. That'll probably be like the entire weekly content next week. Okay. So on to services and security
Hi, Chris.
with Chris's terrible jokes. Mainly, we're going to be focusing on firewalling today, a little bit about Nmap scanning, so basically like how you can scan someone's ports. It's going to be a fairly broad topics today. We're going to have like a lot of different stuff we're going to share with you. So first off, what's a firewall? What do they do? You're all probably at least fairly familiar with the idea. It's basically monitoring traffic, and it's applying network traffic to some rule set that you've made. It's allowing traffic through, it's blocking traffic, whatever. You're essentially going to use it to protect whatever's behind the firewall from everything outside the firewall. So every computer has a lot of ports. That's over 65,000 ports. I suppose if we needed more ports, they could make more, but that's a lot of ports. I don't think we're even like close to being in a position where we would need them all. So, but most of your ports above like what is it, the 200 range, just like never get used. So.
They get used by different pieces of software.
Yeah. Like if you write.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for the most part, you don't use more than like 200 ports.
But also, did we talk about the idea of like IP port already?
Yeah. So you may remember from last week when we talked about the network traffic, how there's the source IP and then there's the destination IP. Source ports and destination ports. That's going to come into more play this week. So if I send from this laptop, I send a packet out, it's going to go from some port on my computer and at my computer's IP address, and it's looking to go to some destination, some server, let's say Google, and Google's IP address might be whatever, I don't know, like 194.10.10, whatever. Doesn't matter. And then because I'm looking to do whatever type of traffic, I'm looking to send it to a specific type of port, because that is how it typically works. You can send different types of traffic over different ports, but there are certain ports that will receive standard traffic. So like, I believe like mail is what, like port 22 or port like 60 something, depending on what type of mail traffic it is.
DNS is 53.
DNS is 53.
So one thing that I like to think about when I'm thinking about like ports and networking and just a very basic level is if like say you have like an apartment complex, the main address for that apartment complex would be its IP, and then all the rooms be a port. So if you wanted to look at like a bunch of, if you wanted to visualize it in that kind of way, every single door behind every door is something else, something different. You could have something like that.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about how IPTables specifically works and how a lot of different firewalls work. So it breaks traffic down into three main tables. There's the Mangle table, which you're not really going to see used very often. It's mostly for like modifying TC packet stuff. Almost never use it at home in your own firewall. The next one, super critical, is the NAT table. So this is like if your router does network address translation. So like, for example, At my home, let's say I've got 100 devices, and each of those 100 devices may be 192.168.1.1.2, etc., to 1.100. But as each of those go to my router, as you might remember from last week, they don't keep those IP addresses. Their IP gets translated from what it was internally to the IP of my router, and the router remembers what port that information is being sent out on, because it selects a specific port on the router, and it remembers that port is tied to my internal IP address. So when it receives a response from whatever server or whatever that I'm communicating to on that port, it knows to send it to my internal IP address. And then lastly is the filter table. This is what's doing like your actual like firewall job. It's choosing the forward input, forward packets, take packets in, send packets out, stuff like that. And that's what's applying to the rules, which we're going to get into in a second. Do we have these slides on the website already?
No.
Okay, can we like put them on there? Just it might be useful to have like some of these links and stuff.
I can't do it without my computer, which you're presenting from.
Okay, well we can do it later. You guys might want this like for your own use at some point, especially during like the breakout session. This might be helpful. But essentially, this is just an image describing what each of these tables does. This is pretty important. This is like where you're going to choose what type of action you're going to be doing with this, or rather where this packet wants to be going. Is it coming from my computer to go somewhere else? Maybe I want to log if I know that like my company's computers are never supposed to send mail traffic outside of the building. I might want to block or log any sort of mail traffic that tries to leave the firewall. If I've got information coming in, you know, maybe the same deal. Maybe we should never receive external mail, or we want to block any external mail that comes in. Stuff like that. So, you guys might want to go ahead and start booting up your Linux instances, your VMs, or your dual boot, whatever you might have. Again, thank Chris for his terrible, terrible jokes.
This is the best slide.
Good and bad internet traffic.
Yeah. So if you guys are in Ubuntu, something you might want to look into later is called UFW, the Uncomplicated Firewall. It's basically just a nicer interface for using the tool that we're going to be talking about today, which is IPTables, a really popular, I believe it's like just the most popular Linux firewall that's available. There are other ones, but this one just integrates really well with the kernel. It's really flexible. It's got like this stateful packet inspection thing going on. So it's just all around. It's very basic, but it's also just a very good tool in general.
I think it's stock on like all distros.
Yeah,
IPTables is there.
Yeah, I don't think it's like comes.
Like
it doesn't.
UFW is just a manager for
Well, yeah, it is. UFW is Ubuntu specific, but I think you can get that on just any Debian-based distribution. But IPTables does, I think, come with every single distribution of Linux out there. It's just it doesn't always come with like IPTables persistent and stuff like that. Chris, did you want to cover the Nmap stuff, or?
Yeah, I can cover Nmap.
Okay.
I'll bring my laptop up there because I have it all set up, and I don't want to pay this resources.
Yeah, if you want, run that command on the bottom of that slide there to get yourselves Nmap, because Nmap is a great, great tool.
Taking my computer back.
You're sick computer.
Screw you.
And in the
Don't
meantime,
be sick.
you can put those slides up on the website.
It's not long enough.
Who was it who was supposed to be in charge of putting links up every week that we got?
Andrew.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything from him, so.
Is that where we were? Alright, so Nmap's a pretty simple tool. That's what we want.
So do you guys have it installed? As you Linux distros?
Does anyone not know what Nmap is? Alright,
Okay.
this is just for you then. Nmap is basically a tool that you use to detect services and just general operating system components on a remote system. You can also do it on your local system with Nmap localhost. So for example, I'm running an SSH and a MySQL database on this computer. You can also do Nmap. I won't do Google. They'll be upset. Yeah, so it's generally best practice not to do this inside of UC's campus. So I've actually brought my Wi-Fi point with me tonight. If you guys want to join GLAR, I believe the password is still GoodLife, GOODLIFE. Of course it knows. Yeah. So I think we talked about the interfaces being separate in their port tables. So I can do my localhost scan, and it should return a MySQL database on there. But if I do, say, my IP on the wireless network, just somewhere, the password is GoodLife, GOODLIFE.
That's what I typed in.
We all have that password?
Is that not working? 'Cause
We're all good?
I'm not actually sure.
So you can connect.
So if I scan that, there's obviously a different rule in place that does not let my MySQL database out of my localhost bind address. So
You want to move the terminal a little bit to the side so we can.
is it not showing up?
Well, it's blocking like the ports.
Okay. I'm going off the one at the end of the room. So
If I might add something about Nmap here. So typically Nmap is used a lot to kind of understand the, if you're like on a red team and you're an attacker, you want to know what your attack surface is. And a lot of times if you're going to be going at something over the network, you would want to know what all devices are on the network, what are they running, what's the version of what they're running, because if you know the version, you can then look up what vulnerabilities have been released for that version, what proof of concepts for, like, you know, what Corey showed earlier. Proof of concept giving you admin access on an unpatched router. So basically you would want to go through, scan an IP, scan an address, and from that get the services, their version, and then from there you can start pivoting and getting some more research into what you want to do. But Nmap can do that and much more. You can go down a hole with Nmap. But
yeah.
Go ahead, man.
So I'm going to do another thing on this terminal. I'm going to open netcat, which is basically just a simple TCP listener. And I'm just going to say listen on port 8080, which is pretty typical if you're doing like local web dev. To run that port. And then if I scan myself, I can of course see it. I don't think it just died. Yeah, okay, yeah. You got to tell it to stay alive or else it does close every time you do it.
Try scanning your own local host. Try scanning your own IP.
Yeah, and if anyone's on the GoodLife network, go ahead and try to connect to me at 166 and just connect to my netcat instances. Throw some data up.
So,
Or not.
it's like command to connect is like what? Netcat.
Yeah, just
The IP.
netcat. Oh, yeah, I probably should have told you. And see. 162. Port. And
So
then.
if somebody does,
Oh, it didn't do anything. I didn't like that.
I think you do have to define the port.
I gave it the port.
Well, with a parameter, the dash B.
HP?
Oh, I guess that's proxy. Lowercase b.
Oh, doesn't like that. Anyway, you can see it's up. So,
I'll find that command line. You can go ahead.
just going to see who's on the network.
So you guys see that 1/32? That's him defining a range. He's basically saying check everything that is on 192.168.2.anything.
Oh, I didn't like that.
I would do /24, unless you know your considers that.
I missed that. It's upset about something. What's the ping scan flag? SN?
I just do I've got lowercase sn.
Ah, there we go.
That's the ping scan. So there's a number of different ways that you can scan through Nmap. How many of you are familiar with like the command ping? It just pings with an ICMP ping. You can do that to discover hosts using Nmap. There's other forms of scans. One's called a SYN scan, which is actually easier or harder to detect than a ping, because sometimes on firewalls they'll just straight up block IC and P traffic. So if you try to run a ping scan on a firewall that's blocking IC and P traffic, you would get nothing back. But if you ran a scan using SYN packets, you could get something back.
All right. Okay, so people are able to join the network. It's good. Cali.lan. Who's that? All right. So I'm going to set up the Nmap right here to just kind of watch our public IP, not my local IP. 6. So we can see my HTTP or HTTP proxy is what that would be. Is still open. My port 8080 that I opened with Netcap. So this is GUFW, which stands for GUI Uncomplicated Firewall, which is just a simple way to look at it. I'll go ahead and turn it on. I think by default it denies all outgoing traffic. So that's not right. Probably should have practiced this. Deny. So now if we tell it to not let any traffic out by default, it should kill all these, and of course it won't, because why would it? Alright.
Did you start the service already? Or?
I thought I did. It says it's on, so. Oof.
Log maybe?
Outgoing deny.
We still have the slides too, if we want to pull up some of the slides.
Yeah. Can anyone connect to my 8080 still?
I'm not sure to connect.
Or at least Nmap it?
I can Nmap it. I just gotta hop on your network.
If you want, we can just cover the firewall rules.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Go ahead.
Oh, pull up
Yeah, we can.
pull up the slides.
Yeah, I still have the slides up. Oh, Nmap was also used in the Matrix, actually effectively, because they showed an O-day in the Matrix, which is kind of crazy.
O-day as in 0 day, right?
As in zero-day exploit, as in it was not documented publicly yet.
Which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It's a 0 day.
Netcat's the NC tool that we used. It's basically just a simple TCP connection. It does all kinds of crazy stuff, though. We're going to really dive into that. Okay. You okay for the rest of this part?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so when you're making your firewall rules, which we'll cover more in a little bit, you can perform all kinds of different actions. There are only 4 you really need to worry about for the sake of these the forward, input, output. Your filtering table. That's accepting, dropping, logging, and rejecting. So accept is when you say, yeah, I've decided that regardless of like what we've logged before this, I think this traffic's fine. We're going to let it through the firewall to go wherever it was looking to go. There's drop, which says, I don't care what we've thought of it so far. We're just going to stop looking at it right now. We're going to drop the packet and we're going to move on. There is also rejecting, which is very similar. It does the same thing, except after it drops the packet, it then returns an error message to whoever sent it. And then there's, lastly, logging, which says we're not going to do anything to the packet, but I am going to put it in the log, and we're then going to move on to the next rule. Okay, so when you're writing a rule, you've got a series of different parameters. I'm going to cover most of them, but you've got a long series of them right here. So there's -A, which means I'm going to append a rule to whatever chain I've chosen. So -A input, -A output, -A forward. So normally you're going to do -A input, because you're looking to look at incoming traffic most of the time. There is -P here for protocol. So we were talking a little bit about ICMP. You might also remember from last week we talked about TCP, UDP. There's also like SMTP. So there's all these different protocols, and you can filter by those protocols.
Who knows what SMTP is? For
Mail protocol.
exactly simple mail transfer protocol.
Yeah. So and then there's -S for the source IP, -D for the destination IP. So you can say, I don't want to accept any packets that are coming from Chris's IP address because he's probably malicious. And you can say -D, I don't want to send any packets to AJ's IP address because then he'll think I'm malicious. -I is where you choose your interface. So like if you guys do if config or IP config, I don't remember. I always get it mixed up between Windows and Linux, but
Linux is if.
Linux is if. Okay, I thought it was if, but I didn't remember 100%. Okay, so if you just run if config in your terminal, you'll see like this list of interfaces. Although if you're using a VM, you might just see the one for ETH0 or ENPS, whatever. Doesn't really matter what it's called, but if you've got multiple network interfaces, you will see multiple interfaces there, and you can choose traffic coming in or out or through which specific interface. And then, so -I is the input interface, -O is the output interface. So that, and then -J is the action you want to take. That's accept, deny, drop, log, or reject, I believe, not drop. So here's just a couple of examples of some rules. So IPTables -A input. So we're going to add this to the input chain of rules. And then -P TCP, so it's going to be TCP protocol. And then --D port SSH, so we're saying that the destination port is going to be for SSH. And -J means we're going to accept that traffic.
It seems to me that the -D port, I guess it can accept SSH and we'll just translate that to port 22.
I guess so.
Which is interesting.
I didn't actually notice that when I was putting this in here, but yeah, I suppose it does. If you guys do, if you guys use man on IPTables, it'll tell you more about that. I obviously don't have time to cover every single possible parameter in IPTables because largely that would be a waste for you, and we'd be here for several more hours. So -A output means on some sort of outgoing traffic wanting to leave our internal network that's behind the firewall and go out somewhere into the world. It is a ping because -P ICMP. It's an ICMP type echo request. That's again another one of those really specific parameters that you'll find if you do -H or if you use man, and then -J accept. So I've got a whole series of these here. If we do have the slides posted, you'll be able to just take a look at those.
And when you enter these things up here, these rule examples, so IPTables, you can interface with IPTables over the command line. So you can legit just write these out, IPTables, -A input, whatnot, and that rule that you write in the terminal at that time will get saved to a file. It's kind of like a text file, but it's not persistent. So when you have your computer booted up and you set your IPTable rules, and you say I'm blocking this, blocking that, and you don't actually make sure it stays persistent, your firewall rules, your IPTable rules they'll just drop. They'll drop when you reboot the machine, and it will be back to whatever that default set of rules is that you can define.
So speaking on making those persistent, that's what these two commands here are all about. You do need to have like IPTables persistent installed, I think. I believe UFW has that as like just a package that comes with UFW. But if you have something like say Kali Linux, it does not just come with that. But that is what those commands are for. Those are for Debian specifically. The address is different if you're using like CentOS or something like that. And then if you just want to see what is currently in your IPTable rules, that's what that top command is for.
So yeah, there's the rules.v4, that text, that document up on the last slide, Corey.
Then it's just some of this netcat stuff.
Go to the last slide though, for IPTables. So, yeah, see that is etc IPTables rules.v4. That's a text file essentially. It's just text with every single bit of the IPTables that you've entered.
Yeah.
Something else interesting about IPTables that hasn't been mentioned yet. You know how like CSS, cascading style sheets, it will value whatever at the top. Like if it reads it from top down. Just like IPTables, if you have a rule that blocks everything and then a rule below it that allows something, that rule that blocks everything is going to take precedence. So if you have their rule, you have to pay attention to the order that your IPTable rules are in that file. And that's a little thing, but it's a little something that they'll get you.
So at the end of the slides, I just have like a couple of links. These are just a few of the things I use to put these slides together. They have some good use cases. Like for example, if you accidentally put in a rule that will block everything, but you need to put in a rule that will accept a specific use case before that, and you don't want to have to delete that rule. One of these, I believe it's the second one, talks about how to, no, it's not. It's the first one. I'm pretty sure it's the first one. Talks about how to insert a rule between two others. So, this other stuff is Chris's netcat stuff, which we can come back to.
Yeah, so our breakout session is all about netcat. Did you make our breakout session tonight, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay.
Part of it.
Are you good to go on the netcat stuff?
Yeah.
You figure that out now?
Yeah, I tried to SSH into my laptop from my phone and it didn't work, so I think I turned off all the ports, but it's still reading from the local bind address. So if someone could please open Nmap and just try to scan, what was my IP? Yeah, so I can still see these as open, but I don't think they are.
Do you want to show them what they type on the command line to do it?
To scan me?
If they were going to scan you, how to do that?
So you'd have to be on the Wi-Fi point that's coming out of my backpack, which is usually dangerous. And then you would do nmap 192.168.8.166. That's my laptop's IP address right now. You can find your own through ifconfig if you're on Linux, or
so run one of those nmap commands there.
So I've actually, this has been continually running, this one right here. It updates every 2 seconds or so. But if we want to run a new one, we would do nmap. Zoom in. Just a simple scan. 92.168.8. We'll just do the whole network coming out of my backpack and see who's on. Oh, it's because my firewall's so super on. Let's try that.
So, if you got on a network and you wanted to start fingerprinting it, seeing who's on the network, say if you're a hacker or whatnot, where would you start to find the range that you'd have to scan over? Any ideas? What command would you type in to be able to know that you wanted to scan 192.168.8.1?
What do I keep doing through?
ifconfig, exactly. When you type in ifconfig or IP space A, you can see the IPs of your currently assigned interfaces, and you can then figure out from that what the gateway of your network connection is, and what is the IP range that you're assigned to. So then there he goes. So you would do ifconfig, you would find 192.168.8. whatever your IP is on this network, and then you'd be able to run nmap against that. And another way to think about this too is you can do 192.168.8.0-255, because I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with CIDR notation. We've talked about it a little bit. And I could go into a tiny little bit here. You know how an IP address is in octets. You have 4 octets. When you say /24, you have 8 bits here, 8 bits here, 8 bits here. And the maximum number that it can represent is 255 in each of these, right? So when you do /24, you're saying that I don't. Oh, what are you doing, man?
You're saying when you do /24, this is important for conceptualizing it. At least it helps for me a little bit. I like to think of it as, okay, so I add 8, I add 8, I add 8. That's 24. That leaves me this 8 free. So that means that this last octet here can be free. You can assign IP addresses in that. If you were to do, say, a slash like 30, you'd only have 2 possible addresses. And if you did a /8, you would block out the first octet, and you could do 0255, 0255, 0255. Kind of see how the sitter stuff works a little bit more? Yes, no? Does it help at all? It's tough. So I mean, if you don't want to think about it in terms of sitter, you can literally just type in 0 dash to whatever range you want. So 0 to 255 if you want to scan all addresses on the network. You got X11 for you?
That's Ryan's MacBook Pro has an open X11 server. Unless you open that with Netcat. Alright.
You guys been able to figure out any scanning? Have you been able to scan? Like run
Scanning right now.
You run a scan?
If you hit any key on your keyboard while Nmap's running, it'll give you a status update.
Yeah, it keeps saying it's like 6 minutes away.
Oh.
What kind of scan did you
Are you running from a VM?
Yeah.
That's why.
Yo, send me a window. I want to see if it works.
Is that just a Netcat instance? Hello? Can you see this?
You do a listen.
Oh, is it?
Firefox.
Oh, I wasn't sure if it was a Netcat. I'm connecting to your database. Oh, whoa. Isn't like that. Alright.
Oh wait, I'm not on the network right now. That's why. Alright. I think
Was it an actual X11 or just an Nmap?
Yeah, I have some X11 instead.
So I like to, if I'm working with Nmap or these kind of tools, I like to Google cheat sheets because the cheat sheets for these tools are great. They can really help you out and kind of just give you a nice little overview of all the possible commands. So if you want to just Google Nmap cheat sheet sometime, that can basically tell you everything you would need to know about Nmap and how to run it and how to work with it, aside from this little introduction for sheets.
If you ever need help on a bash command, by the way, you type in man for manual, and then the name of the command, and it should come up.
If you have it installed.
If you have it installed.
That's what I was talking about earlier when I said if you just do man on IPTables, it'll give you all the nitty gritty on some of those more obscure
Yeah.
parameters.
So yeah, Nmap is a pretty old tool, so it has lots and lots of flags. It's still actively developed. Yeah. So lots of fun stuff you can do with it.
So do we want to do that breakout session, or do we just
Like movie credits. What?
Do we want to do that breakout session? Or we just...
Yeah. Open. Someone connect to the Wi-Fi point and open.
Everyone should connect to the Wi-Fi point if we're going to do this breakout session. It's really quick. I know we're almost done.
Just run this command to open like an empty TCP listener on your device with Kali.
So running that will open or listen on port 8080. You can do any port you want though.
Yeah. Just keep it on 8080 so we can see them really easy.
What's the -K option?
-K is keep alive, so as soon as you connect to it and disconnect, it doesn't kill itself.
Okay.
So if you were to just ping that, it would not ping that, but like scan it, it would just die.
So open that up on yours. Open that up on yours then.
I think I already have that one running.
And open up on, okay, you do.
Yeah, so I still have this running from earlier. And then we can, ooh, done with that.
And you want to do an Nmap scan of yourself and see it. And then all of you guys can follow along with that. Oh.
What? Alright. So I can see that's still alive. I can actually connect to it and send it data. Maybe.
type something in there, you see how it shows up on the other terminal? So
Yeah.
he's communicating.
It actually goes both ways because it's just TCP.
Whoa.
Yeah. So that's pretty helpful. It shouldn't close. It didn't. That's good. So we can see it's still alive, and I'll do a mask scan real quick.
Did you have to run that netcat one first?
The netcat command opens or listens on that port, or will open up a port to listen on. The Nmap command will search on that port on your local host and show you what's running. Now we would want to do a firewall rule or
Yeah.
a UFW rule. to
Now
be
I'm
able
looking
to block
for.
that.
Oh, it didn't work.
Oh, whoops.
That's why. I'm looking on the Wi-Fi network for people who have port 80 open with a netcat listener. I think it forwards.
So somebody else has it open.
Yeah, so someone else is there. I'll talk to you. Who was that? Hello. I'm in your terminal.
Who is that?
Who is this?
That's no one.
Is that no? Who am I talking to? Okay.
If there goes.
Maybe you get a terminal up there to watch.
I'm liking it.
Let me see it work.
Alright, so someone received that message.
Guy at the front desk just like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Just like, what do you mean put my hand up?
Wait, were you talking to 197?
Yeah.
Was I?
Oh, might have been.
184. I can do 197. Hello.
Okay, yeah, I'm getting it.
So that's on
Oh,
yours.
respond.
Wait, can I reply?
Yeah, you can respond to that. It's just TCP. TCP is a data stream that goes both ways. Don't do it, Ryan.
Okay, good.
Alright. Can I filter this? It's almost what I wanted.
Just piping that into grep.
Yeah, I'm just being lazy.
So what is that doing? Just searching that for open?
It's just, yeah, kind of tagging
So
the
you
word.
can see all the ports that are open?
It just makes it easier to see in the
Okay.
command line. That's
No,
it.
it just highlights it.
Yeah, so right there.
Oh,
I mean,
cool.
typically grep is, a regular expression,
It's
but
basically like a search tool, right?
the way it happens to work with mass scan is you can use it to highlight things.
That's cool.
Usually you just pipe data in and it filters it.
Yeah, that's what I thought it would do, but
So,
I guess
Yeah.
so
it's cool.
say you wanted to block that on your computer. Say you wanted to block anything talking to 8080 on TCP, which would knock out internet services, browse websites and whatnot. But here, Chris, you want to take this in? Or you doing a watch? All right.
I'm trying. Not doing it very well.
Mass scan is like an Nmap on steroids. It's just better for scanning a shit ton of addresses. But anyway, let's show them how to block an IP or block that scanning on port 8080.
Okay, so that should keep going, and then just do Nmap open.
Whoa.
That's interesting.
Why does it do that?
I don't know. All right.
What?
I don't think I want that.
So let's do an IPTables entry.
All right, so yeah, this is an IPTables. I'm going to do it through UFW. Just gonna be I'm being lazy. I'm just going to turn off all my traffic.
Matt, I have the command to do it on the command.
No, it's too late. I was lazy. It's still there. All right.
Let's do it on the command line.
No. All right. Yeah, I'll just do through command line. Do you have the command for it?
Yeah. So I'll just walk up. So IPTables, and then you're going to do -A for anything coming in.
Capital A?
Dash A, input, all capital input. Dash P for the protocol, it's going to be using TCP today. And then dash dash destination dash port, which is also dport, just a different way of saying dport. And then we can choose, just you do destination.
It only gives me destination.
Dash port.
That's not real.
Just, that's real. 8080. Then that dash J. Drop.
All right.
Oh, need sudo.
Genius.
Oh, you don't have sudo.
They really didn't like that.
Yeah, so wouldn't let him be root when he ran it, but because you didn't run sudo right, you did. There you go. Yeah. So what this does right here is now he is going to be dropping any traffic into his open destination port 8080. So he should still be able to see it, but none of you should be able to talk to him.
Yeah.
I don't know if this kills lines of communication that have already been established. If it already has an open TCP stream, I don't know if it'll kill that.
It should. So if anyone nmaps my computer, actually, AJ, do you have an HDMI port?
I'm not on your computer. I do have an HDMI port, but I'm not on the router. You're on it. You're on his. You're on the network, aren't you, Ryan?
Yeah.
You could try talking back to him now, and you could pull up your localhost thing, and then we could see if we could demonstrate the fact that is now blocked from that command that's now
You know what you can
gone.
do? You can log it, and then you can just look at your log.
Yeah.
Log what?
The packet before you drop it.
No. It's hard.
Yeah. Well, we got that. So do your little
I have no food in my
Netcap.
actually even working right now.
do your netcap.
Do what, Nick? It's already running.
Listen. Oh, you're listening still.
It should be.
All right. So who's talking to him? Ryan, was that you?
I don't think anyone's talking right now.
Try talking to him.
I don't think it's on.
Someone connect to 192.168.166 port 80 with netcap. It's for reference sets. One of those.
192.168.8.166.
Yeah. I think I should be the only one able to connect because it's my machine and it's not blocking itself.
I think I'm on the stream.
Yeah. So I am sending him packets right now. You can't see my computer, but I literally ran the netcat, his IP, that port.
Nope, right.
So it's dropping all packets. So if any of you were to try to send stuff to him and typing it out, just like it was showing it before, it wouldn't show up now. So it's kind of hard to do a demo on this that's perfect, but
Yeah.
I hope this was kind of a decent idea into the idea of like firewalling and traffic. So
It might not be a bad idea. Maybe if we just had them ping their IP address.
Yeah.
And then wrote the firewall rule to just block drop ICMP and then have the tracking lead again.
I can just block all the traffic again. So if you
it's already
guys
blocked on
do sudo ping and then -AF for flood, which will just keep sending them and sending them and sending them. Go ahead and put my address in there. 166.
And then we gotta get wrapping things up.
Yeah. Then we'll be done.
I'll just show you
Yeah.
guys.
So what you should see should have some amount of periods showing up. You can see they're trying to show up here. Basically, every period that shows up means a failed ping. So if I go back to the correct window and turn off all traffic, anyone who does that should see E, apparently. The big E.
Exactly that dash J drop is exactly what you do.
I can probably just play with it actively. Yeah, it really doesn't like that. E is for error.
It's a basic way to connect over to this computer and be able to transfer information. So say like,
I'm done with this.
you could get a foothold on somebody's computer and then you want to exfiltrate data out, you can choose that means something stealthy is the way, right? You can probably watch it, then you could literally just say, oh, well, here are the passwords that got me from using that, transfer them over. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a really basic way of demonstrating how computers can talk to each other. Really basic way of demonstrating how a firewall rule could stop me from being able to send him things. That's the drop. I just drop it back. It doesn't even say I get rejected.
over here to my perspective when I was connected to him, it said I hadn't been actually established. I could still type stuff up and send it. Just all got dropped.
You can do the same thing with like IPs of advertising websites and private trackers.
Is that what Firewall basically does?
Exactly. Firewall.
Is that basically what a firewall does? Just blocks them using that same command?
Yeah,
basically?
essentially. IPTables
Block
is
and
the
modify.
most basic thing for
So
Blocking IPs.
Are we good though? Are we good to wrap it up?
I'm wrapping up.
Wait, so isn't that general?
Is Netcat secure? No. Netcat is not by default secure because it opens a raw TCP stream, which means any data you send over it, you can open Wireshark and capture and see in plain text. Wow.
So that might be something fun you guys might want to do on your own to learn more about this, is if you open up 2 VMs, and you've got Wireshark going on maybe say a 3rd VM, you've got them all on one interconnected like internal network. You open up a Netcat connection between 2 of the VMs and you can monitor it with Wireshark on the 3rd. Just capture that traffic.
Yes. Alright. I hope you learned something.
Yeah, so with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up the meeting. I'll echo what Chris said. I do hope you guys walked away with something. I know it wasn't the most completely 100% organized demos, but they never go perfectly. Yeah, so now you know how to basically talk between 2 computers and you know the very, very basics of at least IPTables and what their functionality is. And I mean that's all you need to start researching more on it on your own if you wanted to. With that, definitely think about nominations. If you're interested in taking up a leadership position or you think somebody else in the chapter would be good for a position, feel free to nominate them. We'll be setting up the process for that. Other than that, I hope to see y'all here next week, or I hope y'all do really good on your midterms.
I nominate Tyler for president.
If you are considering running, it might be good.